Hi everyone tonight. We're going to start with a moment that doesn't shout, it whispers. I'm standing in the kitchen with the soft hum of the fridge behind me, the morning light slanting across the tile. Across from me, my son Josh looks me in the eye and says, "We don't have space for you anymore," just like he's asking me to pass the salt. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And while you're here, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all are tuning in from. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. I smiled. Not the type of smile you give when you're happy, just the kind your face remembers how to make after years of being polite. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and nodded. "Okay," I said. "I'll be out by tonight." Josh blinked, like he wasn't expecting me to take it so well. Megan, my daughter-in-law, stood just behind him. Her arms crossed, her expression blank, like she'd already moved the furniture in her mind, rearranged the downstairs den into a nursery, erased me like a stain. I walked slowly to my room. Room is a stretch, honestly. It was technically the guest suite, which is a fancy way of saying it had a twin bed, a half bath, and not enough space for shame. There was no closet, just a plastic dresser, and one window that overlooked the side fence and a neighbour's trash bins. I packed quickly. Clothes, a dog-eared paperback I never finished, and a framed photo of my husband James, the only person who'd ever made me feel truly seen. And then I pulled out the red folder I had kept at the bottom of my suitcase. The one with the house deed. The one with both our names on it. You see, I owned 49% of that house. When Josh and Megan couldn't get approved for a full mortgage, I gave them $180,000 from James's life insurance policy. Every penny. I didn't ask for a thank you gift. I didn't even hesitate. I told them it was for their future. I told them it was what families do. Megan hugged me like she was filming a Hallmark ad. Josh kissed my cheek and promised I'd always have a home with them. And yet here we were. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I ordered a cab and slipped out while they were upstairs, probably debating baby names and what colour to paint the nursery. Here's something they don't tell you about aging. You stop being shocked, disappointed, sure, but surprised. Not really. There's a term in psychology called betrayal blindness. It's when you don't or can't recognize how badly someone is hurting you because seeing the truth would destroy something you need. A home, a relationship, a sense of self. I guess I'd been blind for a while. The cab driver didn't ask questions, just nodded when I gave the address of the extended stay motel across town. I sat in the back, holding that red folder like a newborn baby. My hands clutched it so tight the edges left red marks in my palms. The motel room smelled like onions and bleach. The walls were beige, the carpet darker beige. A sad lamp flickered if you looked at it wrong. I paid cash for 3 nights and declined housekeeping. I didn't want anyone seeing how little I had. That night, I laid flat on the stiff mattress, the deed on my chest, and stared at the popcorn ceiling like it might blink back. Here's a quirky fact to break the mood. The average person blinks around 15 to 20 times per minute. That night, I blinked exactly twice in 4 hours, somewhere past midnight. I thought of Josh as a little boy. The way he used to crawl into my bed after nightmares, clutching his blankie and asking if monsters were real. I used to lie. I told him no, that they only existed in stories. But now I know better. Monsters don't need fangs or fur. Sometimes they wear your son's face and ask you to move out of a house you paid for. By morning, I still hadn't slept. But I knew what I had to do, and I knew they had no idea what was coming, because they thought I was just their mother. They forgot I was also a co-owner, and now it was time to remind them. I didn't always have much, but I always had a plan, even when it came wrapped in grief. The day James died, I found myself holding more money than I'd ever seen at once in my life. $180,000. That's what the life insurance paid out. James had been meticulous, the kind of man who sharpened pencils before writing grocery lists. He'd taken out a policy in the early years of our marriage and updated it every 5 years like clockwork. I used to tease him about it. What planning to kick the bucket early, I'd laugh. He never answered, just raised an eyebrow and kissed my forehead. That money didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a final instruction. Take care of what we built. Josh had just gotten married. He and Megan were house hunting, starry-eyed and broke. The mortgage company had turned them down after the appraisal came in too high, and they were 180,000 short of closing. Funny how fate works in round numbers. They didn't ask, I offered. I remember Josh's voice on the phone. Are you sure, Mom, that's everything? I said, it's your future, sweetheart. It's our family's stability. What else would I use it for? He cried. Megan called me 10 minutes later and said, we'll never forget this, Linda. You'll always have a home with us. Yeah, about that. We went to the bank together. I asked to be listed on the deed, not because I didn't trust them, but because I was still grieving, and having something tangible gave me a reason to get out of bed. Something to touch. Something that said you matter here. They agreed without blinking. Josh signed first. Megan smiled like she was posing for a LinkedIn headshot. The house was modern. 4 bedrooms, big windows, the kind of kitchen you see in magazines where no one actually cooks. The walls were white, the floors grey, and everything smelled like lemon cleaner and ambition. They set me up in the downstairs guest suite. Technically a bedroom, though it felt more like storage for humans. Twin bed, no closet. A half bath with no shower, just a toilet and sink. But I didn't complain. I brought 2 old suitcases, my favourite quilt, and James's photo. I told myself this was family. This was what we do. The first week was warm. Josh made me coffee in the mornings. Megan showed me how to use their fancy thermostat and rolled her eyes when I forgot. We ate dinner together once or twice. I cleaned. I folded towels. I smiled too much. Here's a fact you might not expect. When elephants are grieving, they often return to the bones of their dead and touch them gently with their trunks. I guess I was just an old elephant circling a kitchen full of ghosts. By week 2, things had shifted. The coffee stopped. Megan joked with her friends that she had 2 kids and a grandma now. Josh said, a lot more, and thank you a lot less. I asked if I could hang a small shelf in the laundry room, just for detergent and clothespins. Josh groaned. It's fine, Mom, but don't make it a whole thing. Then the upstairs fridge got a padlock. Meal prepping, Megan said. Then the modem moved upstairs. My Netflix stopped working. I'd laugh if it weren't so textbook. That's how it always starts, small things. Locked fridges, missing Wi-Fi, polite silences that stretched too long. But I was still convincing myself. Still telling myself they were stressed. Still folding towels like it was a love language. You ever hear the academic theory of incremental displacement? It's the idea that when you remove things slowly enough, people won't notice what they've lost until it's gone. Yeah, I was the thing. But at the time, I kept smiling. I made Josh's favorite dinner one night, chicken Alfredo, extra garlic. Nobody came to the table. Megan had already eaten. Josh stayed upstairs with work. So I sat alone, eating slowly, thinking about every single time I held that boy's hand when he was sick, every macaroni birthday card I'd kept in a shoebox in my suitcase. And that was the night I heard it. Not a bang, not a scream, just voices. Megan on the phone. She's sweet, but we need our own life. This isn't sustainable. And Josh to someone else later. She won't leave if we keep being nice. We've got to push her out without a fight. Then Megan's words hit like cold water. She won't sign her share over unless she feels unwanted. Make it uncomfortable. She'll leave herself. I stood in the hallway staring at wallpaper I helped them pick 6 days earlier. You know what that moment reminded me of? That weird phenomenon where flamingos will abandon their young if they feel too crowded. Just walk away, like it's nothing. Except this time I was the chick being nudged out. The morning after I overheard their plan, I made toast. Not because I was hungry, but because ritual matters. It's grounding. Bread, butter, silence. Josh came downstairs, grabbed his coffee, didn't say good morning. Megan didn't even come into the kitchen. Her voice floated down the stairs, something about yoga and oat milk. I stood there, knife in hand, watching the butter melt across the toast, like it had somewhere more important to be. Here's something you learn with age quiet is rarely empty. It's often full of things people aren't saying. That evening, I made chicken Alfredo again. Call me stubborn, or maybe just nostalgic. Josh used to call it Mum's magic sauce when he was 7, back when he thought I was invincible. They didn't show, again, so I sat down and ate in silence, letting the pasta cool between bites. It's amazing how memory sneaks into your mouth like that. How something as ordinary as garlic can take you back to happier tables, warmer hands, smaller hearts that hadn't yet learned to close themselves off. I washed the dishes. I wiped the counters. And that's when it hit me there was nothing left to fix. The next morning, Megan walked in while I was washing strawberries. "Linda," she said, arms crossed, voice rehearsed, "we think it's time you looked for something more. Permanent. Just your own space, you know, for your comfort." Josh strolled in a second later, sipping coffee, like he wasn't about to bulldoze his own mother. "We don't have space for you anymore, Mom." And just like that, it was done. Here's a strange little fact I read once in a book about manners. The phrase "we don't have space" is one of the most common euphemisms used in eviction notices. Isn't that polite? You're not unwanted, just unfit for the layout. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I wiped my hands on the dish towel, turned to face them both, and said, "Okay, I'll be out by tonight." You could hear a pin drop. Megan blinked. Josh nodded, like checking off a to-do list. "Thanks, Mom." They didn't ask where I'd go. I walked to my room and packed everything. My clothes, the photo of James, that old paperback I kept pretending I'd finish, and of course the red folder with the deed. I didn't leave a note. I didn't slam the door. I didn't even shut the cabinets, just left them open like the silence I'd lived in was spilling out into the house. I called a cab again. Same driver, oddly enough. He didn't ask questions. I respect that. On the way to the motel, I stared out the window and remembered something my grandmother used to say when she made hard decisions. Sometimes peace costs more than pride. I think I finally understood her. The motel welcomed me back like a sad ex. Same carpet, same flickering lamp. I paid for another 3 nights and declined housekeeping again. Not because I was hiding, but because it was the only place left that was mine. That night, I laid flat on the mattress and opened the red folder. Just looked at the deed again. Read it line by line like a bedtime story. Linda Carter, 49% owner. That was my name. Still there. Old legal documents are oddly poetic. All those signatures and fine print, like someone tried to make permanence out of ink. I didn't fall asleep. I just drifted, like a thought that got tired halfway through. In the morning, I woke up, made instant coffee with powdered creamer, and turned on the motel TV. Static. Then a local news ad. Then quiet again. But it was my quiet. Here's a real academic tidbit for you in sociology. There's something called exit voice loyalty neglect theory. It explains how people deal with dissatisfaction, either by leaving exit, speaking up, voice, staying loyal, or neglecting it altogether. Guess which one I chose? I didn't call Josh. I didn't argue. I made 5 copies of the deed at the motel's business center. One for me, one for a lawyer if it ever came to that, and 3 for anyone who ever doubted that I still had power. Then I walked to a nearby diner, ordered eggs and hash browns, asked for extra butter. The server smiled. "Rough day." I smiled back. "It's getting better." Halfway through my second cup of diner coffee, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go, because at a certain age, unknown numbers usually mean appointment reminders or accidental robocalls trying to sell you insurance you already cancelled. But something told me to pick up. Ms. Carter, a man asked. His voice was polite, clipped, like he rehearsed every chord. My name's Brad. I'm with Carolina Private Lending. You're listed as a co-owner of a property at 124 Grayson Park Drive. Are you aware? I cut him off. Yes, I said slowly. What's the issue? There's been a default, he continued. Your son, Mr. Joshua Carter, took out a $95,000 business loan using the house as collateral. Payments haven't been made in several months. We've issued 3 notices. We're moving forward with foreclosure unless the loan is resolved by Friday. I stirred my coffee absent-mindedly, the spoon clinking against the chipped mug. What happens if I do nothing? Well, Brad hesitated, clearly not expecting that answer. The house will be foreclosed on. You are listed on the title, so we're notifying you out of courtesy. You do have the option to assume the debt or release your claim. I told him to email the paperwork. Then I sat there in that booth, looking at the greasy hash browns that now tasted like ash. This wasn't just neglect. This was deception. Josh had borrowed nearly $100,000 using our house, my house, and hadn't said a word. The startup must have tanked. Megan probably didn't know. Or maybe she did, and just thought if they smiled big enough, it would disappear. I thought about what would have happened if I'd stayed. If I'd signed my half over like they hoped. If I'd made things easy. Instead, I took that paperwork, walked back to the motel, and laid it on the desk like a puzzle I had every piece of. Here's a strange old age wisdom. If they hide the truth, they're already prepared for the consequences. I wasn't going to stop the foreclosure. I was going to let the consequences breathe. I took out the same blue pen I used to sign Josh's permission slips for field trips when he was little. I signed every line slowly, deliberately. Brad called again within the hour. We received your release form, Miss Carter. The process will move forward. Good, I said, and hung up before I could second-guess it. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I didn't call my sister or text the church group. I just sat in that dark little motel room and listened to what I'm not sure. But silence, when chosen, is a different kind of music. And mine had been on mute for far too long. I went for a walk down the street, just to move my legs. The air smelled like fried dough from the food truck by the gas station. I passed 2 teenagers arguing over which Marvel movie had the worst ending for the record. It's not Endgame. Don't. Trewat. The world kept spinning. And for once, I wasn't trying to chase it. Back in my room, I picked up James's photo. His smile looked the same, no matter the lighting gentle, a little off-center, like he'd just made a joke only I would get. I whispered, "It's done." Here's a quirky fact. Some ancient cultures believed names held power. If you said a thing out loud, you made it real. Well, Josh had made this real. And Megan had helped. They lit the match the day they told me I wasn't needed. I just gave the flame oxygen. Foreclosure was scheduled for Friday. Bright orange notices would be taped to the same front door I once scrubbed fingerprints off of after Megan's baby shower. And they would have no idea it was coming. Until it came, and by then I'd be gone, not defeated. Just elsewhere. Thursday morning came with clouds and a low, moody sky that looked like it hadn't had its coffee yet. I sat on the motel bed with a cup of instant brew in one hand and the signed foreclosure documents in the other, watching dust float through a single beam of light like it had nowhere better to be. I wasn't expecting fireworks. I wasn't even expecting a phone call. What I wasn't prepared for, what still hit me sideways, was the silence. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that feels like breath after chaos. The kind that comes before something cracks. At 8:04 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Josh. "Did you cancel something with the house? We just got a weird letter from a lender." I put the phone down and let it buzz again. 9:22 a.m., there's a notice on the door. "Call me." Still, I said nothing. By lunchtime, Megan joined the chorus. "Linda, please. We're confused. Just tell us what's going on." I didn't answer, not out of spite. I just couldn't. If I heard one more performance, one more carefully worded concern, I might forget that silence is sometimes the sharpest weapon of all. You ever hear that saying, don't explain? Your friends don't need it, and your enemies won't believe it. At 4:17 p.m., I got a screenshot in a text, a bright orange notice, taped to the white-painted door of 124 Grayson Park Drive. Sheriff's Office. Official. Final. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I just sat back in the stiff motel chair and exhaled. The kind of breath you take when a weight's been on your chest so long you forgot it wasn't supposed to be there. That night, I toasted myself. Not for revenge, not even for victory, for clarity. A little wine, some crackers, and peanut butter straight from the jar like I was 25 again and had nothing to prove. Here's an odd little fact. Peanut butter was originally promoted in the early 1900s as food for people with no teeth. I guess I qualified metaphorically. I journaled that night, something I hadn't done in years. Wrote down the date, the time, the facts. Today they started to feel what I felt. Not because I punished them, but because I stopped shielding them from their own choices. Friday morning, I didn't go to the house. I didn't want to see it. There's no dignity in watching someone else's disaster, even if you warned them about the storm. At 10:42 a.m., I got a voicemail. No caller ID, but I knew the voice. Josh, I don't know what you did, but we're out. Gone. You ruined us, Mom. I hope you're happy. That was it. No apology, no real anger. Just blame like I had tripped a wire they installed themselves. Then at noon, Megan's message came. If you wanted to hurt us, congrats. We're being evicted. I just hope you sleep well tonight. You've destroyed your family. Family. That word clung to me for hours like a wet coat, as if I had destroyed it, as if they hadn't chipped away at it meal by meal, silence by silence, locked fridge by locked fridge. Let me toss you a little academic spice here. Social psychologists talk about fundamental attribution error. It's the tendency to blame someone's character instead of considering the context. Megan and Josh were drowning, sure, but they also brought buckets to the flood. I turned off my phone and went for a walk. The motel's sidewalk was cracked. The air smelled like rain and laundry detergent. I bought a notebook from the corner store, one of those cheap ones with flimsy pages and a too stiff spine. First page, I wrote, "Today they lost everything, and I found my silence." It didn't feel like closure yet, but it felt like a border, a line drawn in permanent ink, and for now that was enough. They didn't stay quiet for long. 2 days after the lockout, Megan posted on Instagram 10 pastel slides, white cursive text, over soft pink and beige backgrounds titled, "When Family Betrays You." You'd have thought she was launching a skincare line, not rewriting history. Slide 1. We opened our home with love. Slide 2. We supported her through grief and healing. Slide 3. We were blindsided by manipulation and cruelty. And on it went. Each slide chipped away at the truth, replaced it with something gentler on the eyes and easier on the ego. She never once mentioned the $180,000 I gave them. Never mentioned the locked fridge or the way she whispered about me like I was a mildew stain they couldn't scrub out. She called it elder abuse. That one made me laugh. A real one. The kind that escapes before you realize you're even capable of humor again. The comments were brutal. Strangers chiming in with phrases like, "Some people just want to control their kids forever." This is why boundaries are so important. "You're so strong, Megan," sending prayers and wine. I scrolled. Not because I needed validation, because I needed confirmation that erasure can be done with a smile. Then I saw Josh's comment. "You did everything right. You protected our future." She chose destruction. No tags, no names, just a public wound meant to make me look like the one holding the knife. And for a second, just one, I wanted to fight back. I had everything. Screenshots, deeds, transfer receipts, Megan's texts about making her feel unwanted, the voicemail from Josh blaming me for a house he gambled and lost. But I remembered something my father used to say, "Don't wrestle pigs. You both get dirty, and they like it." So I stayed quiet until the knock came. Monday morning. 9:03 a.m. 3 quick taps on my motel door. Not loud, not threatening, but sure of itself. I opened it just a crack. A woman stood there mid-50s, hair up in a messy bun, holding a notebook and wearing a city badge clipped to her purse. "Linda Carter," she asked. I nodded. "I'm Doreen. I work with the City Housing Board. I saw some of the posts, but I just wanted to hear your side." We sat in the motel lobby. It smelled like old vending machine coffee and fabric softener. I told her everything. The money, the guest room, the padlocked fridge, the overheard conversation about making me feel unwanted, the loan, the silence, the eviction, the staged Instagram posts, all of it. Doreen didn't take notes. She just nodded, listened. "I'm not press," she said finally. "I'm just tired of good people getting smeared by influencers with matching throw pillows." She handed me her card. "If you need help finding housing, real housing, I've got strings I can pull." And just like that, I felt something I hadn't in weeks witnessed. Funny thing, at my age, you stop needing to be understood. You just want to be seen. That night, I opened my email. Subject line: request for interview. Charlotte Local Magazine. I didn't even read the message, just forwarded it to myself with the subject line changed to "Hold on to this," because I wasn't ready to tell my story. Not yet, but when I did, I'd tell it on my terms. Here's a quirky little tidbit before we close this chapter. Did you know flamingos are naturally grey? Their pink color comes from what they eat. Just a reminder, sometimes what you consume is what stains you. And Megan had been snacking on manipulation for months. I poured myself a cup of motel coffee and stared at the blinking Wi-Fi light on the TV stand. I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman who had just taken her story back, one quiet truth at a time. 3 days later, Megan reappeared, this time on TikTok. I should have known it wouldn't stop with Instagram. No, not for Megan. She'd always known how to use an audience. This was just a new stage. There she was, front and center mascara running in perfect black streaks, a cardboard sign clutched to her chest. Evicted by my mother-in-law. In the background, a U-Haul. Open doors, a few boxes, and one particularly visible baby bump. The caption: "This is what happens when family chooses hate." It got nearly 80,000 views in 2 days. The comments rolled in like a tide with bad grammar. "Some people are just toxic. She's pregnant, for crying out loud. Let's get them a GoFundMe." And just like that, Megan was a martyr. I didn't watch the whole thing. Just enough. Enough to see the desperation masquerading as sincerity. Enough to feel that familiar twist of shame, like somehow, even with all the truth on my side, I was still the villain in someone else's bedtime story. The final straw came the next morning when my old pastor texted me. "Linda, what's going on? Can I call you?" He didn't accuse, didn't demand. Just reached out with a question that felt like it weighed 20 pounds. I took a deep breath, opened my red folder, pulled everything out. The deed. The wire transfer receipt for $180,000. The foreclosure email from Carolina Private Lending. The screenshots of texts: "Once she's gone, we can finally plan the nursery." And I sent it all. To him, to my cousins, to the church ladies' group chat. No caption, no explanation, just proof. Within 5 minutes, my niece replied, "Oh, so she lied to everyone." Then nothing. No defense, no excuses, just silence. And somehow that silence meant more than any apology ever could. It meant they saw it. Finally, they saw me. Here's something old folks don't say often enough. You can survive being misunderstood, but you can't survive being erased. That evening, I got a new message. "Josh, again. Please call me. Just talk to me. 10 minutes later, I know things got bad, but you're still my mum." I didn't reply. Not out of hate, not even anger. Because sometimes bridges don't burn in a blaze. They crumble piece by piece with every time someone you love decides you're disposable. I stared at the screen, at the message. Then I locked the phone and slid it into the nightstand drawer. Here's an academic take for you in communication theory. There's this idea of non-response as a message. The silence doesn't mean absence, it means choice. That night I whispered it aloud. Not to Josh, not to Megan. Just to myself. Still your mom, but not your fool. Then for the first time in months, I slept. 8 full hours. No dreams. No midnight heartbeats pounding. Just rest. Funny thing, peace doesn't announce itself. It just walks in when the doors are finally shut on everything else. It started with flowers. White lilies, the kind Josh used to grab from the grocery store when he was 15, and trying to apologize for something stupid like denting the car or lying about a quiz. They were sitting outside my motel door in a cheap glass vase, wilting slightly in the early summer heat. No note, no name, just the implication, "We're sorry. Let us back in." I didn't bring them in. I didn't even touch them. I waited until the motel clerk passed my room during his rounds and asked, "Want me to toss these?" I nodded. Later that afternoon, there was a knock at my door. Not just any knock, that knock. Hesitant, familiar, the kind of knock someone uses when they still think they're entitled to be let in. I peeked through the peephole. Josh. Alone. Pale, thinner, wearing a hoodie like he was trying to fold into himself. I didn't want to open it. Every part of me screamed, "Don't." But I cracked the door 2 inches. "5 minutes," I said. He nodded like a scolded child being given a second chance. We sat at the motel's tiny round table, the air between us thick with everything unsaid. "I messed up," he started. I stayed quiet. "I should have told you about the loan. I shouldn't have let Megan talk to you like that. I panicked." Still quiet. "She's pregnant," he added like that was an apology. Like biology was a reason to forget decency. For a second, I saw the boy who used to cry when I left for night shifts. But it faded. Fast. "I didn't come to argue," he said. "Just was wondering if you'd be willing to sign a document. Nothing big. Just to help us negotiate with the lender and get back on track." And that was the moment I knew. He hadn't changed. He hadn't come for peace. He came because he still thought I was a lever to pull. I held out my hand. "Show me." He hesitated, then pulled out a manila folder and handed me the paper. I read it once, then again. Not just consent, not even just negotiation. It was a partial power of attorney, written in vague, legal-friendly language, the kind of form that could be twisted 6 ways by someone with a flexible conscience. It would have given him access to manage foreclosure proceedings, which meant bank accounts, which meant my pension. I placed the paper down slowly. "Get out," I said. Josh blinked. "Mom?" "Out." He stood like maybe he still had a card to play. "We're going to lose the baby's future." I looked him square in the eyes. "You already did." He left. I didn't cry. Instead, I stood at the door until my hands stopped shaking. Then I did something I hadn't done since college. I packed my things in under 15 minutes. I asked the front desk to move me to another room. Different floor, different hallway. They didn't ask why. That night, I blocked Josh's number. Not because I hated him, because I had to protect myself from the part of me that still wanted to believe he meant it when he said I messed up. Here's something no one tells you about love. It can make you fluent in excuses. And I was done being bilingual. The next morning, I walked to the housing board office. Doreen was there behind her desk, sipping something from a thermos, with "World's okayest bureaucrat" in peeling gold letters. She looked up and smiled like she'd been waiting for me. "I want to move on," I said. "Not just from them. From all of it." She didn't say "good for you" or "I'm proud of you." She just reached into a drawer and slid a folder across the desk. "Senior housing coastal options," she said. The first listing. A 2-bedroom condo near Wilmington. Porch. Ocean access. Affordable with my pension. Quiet complex for retirees and veterans. I circled it. This one. That night, back at the motel, I opened my email one last time. Subject line: no emojis, no hashtags. It was Megan. Just one short message. "I don't know what we're supposed to do now. We have nothing. I know you hate me, but think of the baby." I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the laptop, made myself a cup of tea, and watched the sun disappear behind the motel parking lot. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because what I was planning next wasn't a response. It was a reckoning. 3 more days passed. I spent them mostly in silence, walking to the corner market for tea and crackers, sitting by the window, with a notebook I hadn't yet written in. I watched people come and go from the motel families, on the move, workers with paint-stained jeans, one man who always whistled the theme from Cheers at exactly 6 p.m. Then Sunday at 7:42 p.m. another knock. I was in pajama pants halfway through a peppermint tea. I debated ignoring it, but something in the air changed. You ever feel that, like the knock itself, brings a draft? I looked through the peephole. Megan, her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her eyes red-rimmed. She held a bundled infant pink blanket, one tiny hand, curled into a sleepy fist. A diaper bag slung over her shoulder. "Linda," she called softly, "I'm not here to fight." I cracked the door 2 inches. "We don't know what to do anymore," she continued. "Josh is falling apart. We got kicked out of the rental we found, failed the credit check." I didn't say anything. "Please," she said, voice thinner now. "Can I come in?" I opened the door. Not all the way, just enough to let her squeeze past. She stepped inside like someone walking on unfamiliar carpet, glancing around the tiny room. "You still like it cold in here, huh?" she said, forcing a tired smile. I didn't respond. I watched. She sat down on the edge of the bed, bouncing the baby gently. "We really screwed up," she admitted. "I said things I didn't mean. We were scared, stressed." I nodded. Not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. "Josh. He's too proud to admit it, but he's drowning. We both are. Our accounts are frozen. Phone's about to be cut off. We owe over 10 grand. We don't even have a crib." Her voice broke. Her lip trembled. For a second, I almost softened, until I noticed the diaper bag. Tan leather. Branded tag still attached. Posh baby. A designer line I'd seen in the motel lobby's catalogue. Retails over $900. "That's new," I said quietly, pointing to the bag. She hesitated. It was a gift, she said too quickly. "From a friend." I stood, slowly walked to the window. Outside, a black SUV idled at the curb. Sleek. Clean. Definitely not broken down or desperate. "You came here to get something," I said. She flinched. "I came to ask for help." "No," I corrected. "You came to film something." I turned fast. "Where is it? Your phone, your purse. Whatever you're using to record me." She stood, her face crumbling. "What are you talking about?" "You're recording this," I said. "I saw the lens in the side pocket when you sat down." Her lips parted, then closed. "We just wanted proof," she whispered, "in case you tried to twist things." I stared at her. Long, flat. "Get out," I said. "Linda." "Now." She didn't move, so I stepped closer. Not yelling, not violent, just very, very still. "Let me be clear," I said. "I'm not your storyline. I'm not your villain. And I am definitely not your ATM." Her eyes welled up. The baby squirmed. "She's your granddaughter." "No," I said. "She's your child. Raise her better than you treat people." Megan's back stiffened. She stepped out slowly, cradling the baby like a trophy she didn't win. She walked to the car, climbed in, and didn't look back. I stood there, locked the door, sat on the bed, hands trembling again, but not from fear. From adrenaline. She had tried to bait me into a moment she could clip edit twist into sympathy clicks, but I hadn't given it to her. And now I was done playing. The next morning, I took the bus to the courthouse, filed for a temporary restraining order. I brought everything: screenshots, messages, Megan's fake plea, even a printout of the designer diaper bag's price tag. The clerk barely blinked. "You're not the first," she said. "You won't be the last." That night, back at the motel, I opened my notebook, wrote one line. They brought a baby to play victim. I brought receipts. Then I turned the page and started listing names. Not enemies. Just people I owed nothing to anymore. Because the next time they came for me, I'd be ready, and they wouldn't see it coming. The restraining order came through 2 days later. A thick envelope slid under my motel door, sealed with a court stamp and finality. It felt heavier than it should have, like justice, like punctuation, at the end of a very long, very exhausting sentence. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just stared at it for a while, my fingertips tracing the edge of the seal like it was a relic. Then I made copies. 5 of them. One for the motel manager, one for the local police department, one for Doreen at the housing board, one for my records, and one I mailed, unaccompanied, unsigned, to Megan and Josh's last known address. I attached a single sticky note that said, "You wanted legal? You got it." I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. That evening, I opened my email and replied to the request from Charlotte Local Magazine. No greetings, no long explanation. I didn't ask for a quote or offer a soundbite. I just attached everything. The deed copy, the wire transfer for $180,000, the foreclosure notice, screenshots of texts, a photo of the designer diaper bag. The subject line read, "Since they want to talk, let's talk." The editor called me the next morning. Her voice was calm, low, a little gritty, like someone who drinks too much tea and keeps secrets for a living. "We believe you," she said. "Would you be willing to go on record?" I said yes, on one condition. They have to print this line at the top. "This is not revenge. This is clarity." The piece ran the following Sunday. 3 full pages printed in clean serif font titled, "When Help Becomes a Weapon, One Mother's Account of Financial Betrayal." It didn't go viral, didn't crash the internet, but it caught just enough attention to stir the pot. People in Charlotte started talking not gossip, but discussion. Real talk about housing ethics, inheritance. The quiet war between generations no one wants to admit exists. Even the same neighborhood Facebook group where Megan had originally posted her frantic "We've been scammed" message started to shift tone. I saw a comment that simply read, "Wait, was she the one who paid for the house?" That one made me chuckle. Because sometimes the truth just needs a chair at the table. But that wasn't the moment I knew the tide had turned. That came the following Friday. I was walking to a local coffee shop, not the one across the motel parking lot, but the one a few blocks over with real baristas and chairs that didn't wobble. I stepped inside and saw him. Josh, sitting alone in the back corner, hoodie pulled up, staring into his cup, like it might offer him some kind of forgiveness if he just looked hard enough. He didn't see me at first, but then he looked up. Our eyes met, and in that look I saw it. Not regret, not apology, just distance. The kind of distance you can't cross anymore. The kind you don't come back from. I didn't wave. He didn't flinch. We just looked, for maybe 3 seconds. Then I walked past. Later that night, I got an email from him. No subject line, just this. I read the article. "I won't contact you again. I'm sorry you felt like you had no choice." That one made me pause. Not because it hurt, but because even in that final note, he couldn't say "I'm sorry for what I did." Just "sorry you felt." As if my pain had been an inconvenience he couldn't schedule around. Here's a term you might enjoy if you're into language apology adjacency. It's when people offer the illusion of remorse without the burden of accountability. Josh had mastered it. I archived the email without replying. Not out of cruelty, because some doors aren't meant to be reopened. They're meant to stay shut and grow vines. The next morning, the motel manager knocked gently and handed me a stack of forwarded mail. Water bill junk coupons, one envelope with a real estate logo, and a sticky note from Doreen. "You've been approved. Keys are waiting." I opened the listing again. 2-bedroom condo. 2nd floor. Ocean breeze. Rent just under budget. Move-in date next Friday. I stood there holding the paper in both hands, realizing I hadn't flinched at an unknown number in over a week. That night, I updated my will. Josh's name came off. I split everything 3 ways. A local domestic abuse shelter. A literacy program. The animal rescue I used to volunteer for. Then I emailed my lawyer with one last instruction. If he ever challenges this, send them everything, publicly. I didn't wait for a reply. Because I already knew what it would say. The final message came the following weekend. 4 words. "We lost everything. Congrats." No punctuation, no name, no warmth. Just a flat declaration like someone writing a line in their diary before ripping the page out. I knew it was Megan. Even from a new number, I could feel her voice in the shape of those words, sharp, heavy, and empty at the same time. The way guilt sometimes sounds when it's trying to wear anger as a disguise. I read it once, then I deleted it. No reply, no reaction, nothing left to say. Because by then, I wasn't in that motel room anymore. I was packing my things for the last time, not because I was running, but because I had finally stopped. The movers were late that Friday. Not by much, just enough for me to drag the essentials in myself. First thing I carried in the red folder, then James's photo, then a small suitcase with just enough clothes to fill one closet, not spill out of it. The condo was smaller than I expected, but brighter. Sunlight came in wide and soft, spilling across white walls and catching on the edge of the laminate floor like it was trying to tell me something. No shouting from upstairs, no footsteps pacing, no whispers, no fake apologies. Just space, my space. Here's a strange little fact I read once: humans exhale about 17,000 times per day, but only a few of those breaths actually feel like release. This was one of them. The first thing I did after setting my bag down was make a cup of tea using the old kettle that came with the unit. It whistled like an elderly friend, with opinions shrill but oddly comforting. I stood on the little balcony and listened. Couldn't see the ocean, but I could hear it. That was enough. I didn't check social media that weekend. Didn't post, didn't scroll. I didn't even tell the people who asked me for updates what happened. Not because I was secretive, because I had finally realized I didn't owe anyone a version of the story they could understand. Instead, I filled the fridge with food I actually wanted to eat, lined up the tea mugs, put the seashell Megan once brought back from Myrtle Beach, not for me, but for the aesthetic, in a drawer where it wouldn't catch my eye again. Then I walked to a roadside flower stand and bought 2 tiny houseplants, the kind that promise low maintenance and slow, stubborn growth. I named one Mercy, the other Boundaries. By the middle of the week, I was in rhythm. Coffee at 8, walk at 10, journal at 3. I signed up for an art class that met in the rec room every Tuesday and Thursday. My instructor's name was Walter. 70 years old. Wore suspenders. Told truly terrible jokes. But he remembered my name on the second day. On Thursday, he walked over, leaned over my canvas, and said, "You paint like someone who survived something." I smiled. That's because I have. And I meant it. I didn't talk about Josh. Not to Walter, not to anyone in the class. That part of my life was packed into a mental drawer marked unopened. Not locked. Just closed. Until the letter came. Handwritten. No return address. Josh's messy script. Postmarked from a P.O. box near Charlotte. 4 lines. "I know I can't undo what I did. I don't expect anything from you. I just want you to know I'm trying." I named her Emily Linda Carter. I read it twice. Then folded it gently and slid it into the drawer where I kept the voided deed and my updated will. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just let the words sit. Here's an old-age truth we never say out loud. Healing isn't a ceremony. It's a quiet vote we cast for ourselves over and over sometimes without knowing it. Later that night, I took a walk to the beach, barefoot in the sand. The air smelled like salt and firewood from a distant barbecue. Waves rolled in and rolled out soft and slow. I stood there for a long time, not saying anything, just breathing. I thought about Emily, about the name she now carried, about the man who used to be my son, the boy who once brought me flowers from the neighbor's yard and cried when I called them stolen. He was gone, but somewhere out there, maybe someone better was being born from what he ruined, and that I decided wasn't my burden anymore. I turned around and walked home. The condo glowed with a kind of warmth you can't buy at Home Goods. Not the kind you get from scented candles or artfully placed throw pillows, but the quiet sort. The warmth that comes from knowing no one is going to burst through a door demanding something from you. I started calling it my lighthouse. Not because it stood high above crashing waves, but because it reminded me that I'd made it through something stormy and I was still here shining anyway. The seashell I'd picked up from a local artist, a blue one with silver edges, sat next to my keys. The woman at the folding table who gave it to me had said, "Pick the one that calls to you." I did. She'd nodded. "That one's for people who've just let go of something heavy." She wasn't wrong. That week, blurred in the best way. I baked muffins I didn't have to share, read half a novel in one sitting, sat on my porch in silence just to hear the breeze move through pine trees. I even started talking to my plants mostly about weather and how we were both still standing. Then one afternoon, I passed a community board in the lobby and saw a flyer, Tuesday meditation. For those who are ready to let it go. I smiled. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the invitation was asking too much of me. Here's a quirky little fact. Jellyfish, despite being 95% water, have no heartbrain or bones, and they still keep moving forward. Some days I felt like that. A little formless, sure, but still floating, still here. Then one morning, a card slid under my door. Not from Josh, not from Megan, from Doreen. It was simple, white with navy ink. It read, "Your final documents have been processed. We're glad you're home." Underneath, in her own handwriting, "P.S. That blue seashell looks good on you." I taped it to the inside of the cabinet. Because sometimes kindness is quiet, and you need reminders. And just when I thought the chapter had closed for good, I got one more surprise. A voicemail from a local librarian. "Hi, Ms. Carter. This is Judith at the Wilmington Public Library. Someone left a donation in your name, 3 children's books, and a note that said, 'To the woman who taught me how to be quiet with dignity.' Thought you'd like to know." No signature, but I knew who it was. Josh. Or maybe Megan, maybe both, maybe Emily. It didn't undo anything. It didn't fix years of erasure or rewrite their choices. But it was something. And in my new world, something didn't need to be everything. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I made Alfredo sauce. Just for me. Extra garlic, extra cream. Served on warm plates in a quiet kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't toast the air like I'd won. I just ate, slowly, with purpose. Because healing isn't always big. Sometimes it's just dinner made right with no one saying they've already eaten upstairs. And afterward, I watched an old black and white movie, the kind James used to like. Then I curled up under a new blanket, not one I'd brought with me, but one I chose just for this place. A deep blue one like the seashell. I turned off the lights and whispered aloud, "This is not revenge. This is clarity." Then I fell asleep before the credits even rolled. It wasn't until the second Tuesday of the month that I realized I hadn't looked over my shoulder in days. There was a moment standing in the checkout line at the local market, holding a carton of eggs and a bunch of parsley, when it just hit me I wasn't waiting for someone to yell my name, confront me, accuse me of ruining their lives. I was just buying groceries. You don't realize how much fear you carry until it finally lets go. That afternoon, I took the long way home, past the boardwalk, past the seafood shack with the hand-painted cash-only sign. A woman with salt and pepper braids waved at me from the art co-op window, like we were already old friends. I waved back. When I got home, I opened my notebook again. The one with the first page that read, "Today, they lost everything." And I found my silence. This time I wrote something different. Silence didn't mean nothing. It meant peace and power. And maybe that's the trick. We grow up thinking words are everything. That loud is strong. But there's a kind of strength in what you don't say, in walking away without burning the whole village down. Still, closure has a funny way of testing your grip. Because 2 days later, there was another letter. This one wasn't handwritten. It was printed, lawyer-quality formatting, a letterhead I didn't recognize. At first I braced. I thought, here it is. The custody drama, a demand, a lawsuit. But it wasn't from Josh or Megan. It was from their landlord. Apparently they'd failed to disclose their foreclosure and had tried to use my name as a co-signer on a fraudulent lease application. I felt the anger rise for about 5 seconds. Then I laughed, long and deep. the kind of laugh that wrinkles your nose and shakes your ribs. I emailed the landlord back with one sentence. I am no longer associated with Joshua or Megan Carter in any legal, financial, or personal capacity. I suggest you vet your tenants more carefully. And then I blocked that number too. You see, old me might have entertained the drama, might have written a long emotional explanation, tried to clear my name. But not this version of me. This version knew where to direct her energy. Here's a term from behavioral psychology: extinction burst. It's when people escalate bad behavior when they realize the old patterns aren't working anymore. Josh and Megan were bursting, and I was finally blessedly unavailable. Later that evening, I found an email in my inbox from my lawyer. A single sentence: all final documents received, power of attorney revoked, will updated and filed. That night, I lit a candle. Lavender vanilla, sat on the floor and folded every last piece of paper I had into one neat envelope, stuck it in a filing box with James's old records, and labeled it, "Closure, do not reopen." I walked to the balcony and stood in the warm breeze. From this far up, the ocean didn't look wild. It looked endless, wide, forgiving. And then my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize again. But I answered. Old habit. "Ms. Carter," a soft voice asked. "This is Marianne from the Literacy Outreach Program. We just wanted to confirm, was the donation in your name supposed to include a dedication?" I blinked. No, I said, but I'd like to add one now. There was a pause on the other end. "Okay, great. What would you like it to say?" I looked out at the horizon and said without thinking, "To those still learning what they deserve." Marianne exhaled. "That's beautiful, ma'am. I'll make sure it's printed exactly." I hung up and sat with that line for a while, because honestly, that was me. That was everyone I'd ever loved, and most of the people I'd had to walk away from. We're all still learning, some slower than others, some not at all. But if you're lucky, and I do mean lucky, you get the chance to rewrite the ending, not with a bang, with a whisper. By the time Friday came around, I barely remembered what day it was. I had a routine now, not the kind that fills a planner or chases productivity, but the kind that makes the days soft around the edges. Wake up when the light hits my cheek. Coffee. Walk. Art class. Tea. Journal. Peace, it turns out, isn't loud. It's not even always happy, but it is steady. That morning, I stopped by the post office. My P.O. box was mostly filled with circulars and catalogues I didn't sign up for. But tucked between a coupon for orthopedic sneakers and a flyer for a boat show was a padded envelope. No return label. I hesitated. My heart kicked once. Old instincts. I opened it slowly right there on the sidewalk. Inside, a folded photo and a tiny onesie. Pale yellow. No writing. No scent. Just soft cotton and silence. The photo was of Emily, propped up against a pillow, big eyes, a lopsided bow on her head. Next to her, a wrinkled index card with 3 words in bold black ink. "We tried. Goodbye." No signature. Just that. I stood there for a while, the envelope in one hand, the wind brushing at my sweater, like it was trying to pull me somewhere. Here's a strange little truth from mythology. In some stories, the ferryman doesn't charge a coin, he only takes your name. That's what this felt like. Like someone was offering me back the name I used to carry for them. Not asking me to use it, just handing it back. I walked home slowly. When I got back to the condo, I placed the onesie in a drawer. Not to keep it, just to wait. Some stories you don't close with an answer. You just let them go without slamming the door. That afternoon, I got a message from Doreen. "You still interested in volunteering?" I'd told her months ago I might want to help with senior transition programs. Helping people move, navigate documents, advocate when their voices shook too hard. "Yes," I typed back. "I think I'm ready." That night, I made soup. The kind James used to love: lentils, garlic, a little too much pepper. I put on a playlist called Cooking Alone and Liking It, and danced like nobody had ever accused me of destroying a family. Then I poured a second bowl, set it on the other side of the table, and let it sit there. Not for anyone else. just to remind myself I'm allowed to take up space now, even at the dinner table. After dinner, I pulled out my notebook. I'd filled almost every page. Little things, dreams, grocery lists, fragments of old memories I didn't know I still carried. I opened to a blank page and wrote, "You don't need to be forgiven to be free." Then I closed it. No flourish, no final monologue, just closed it. Here's an academic phrase I love: closure is a social construct. It implies we're owed a neat ending, that healing is linear, that resolution arrives with a bow. But truth. Some wounds never close, they just stop bleeding. And some people don't get erased, they get rewritten. That night, I slept with the window open. No alarms, no texts, no knocks. Just ocean air and the hush of a life finally mine. 10 days later, I stood on the beach again. Same place. Same time of day. Late afternoon sun curling low, kissing the tops of the waves like it didn't want to say goodbye. I wore the same cardigan I always did, pale grey, soft at the elbows, just enough weight to keep the wind from cutting through. The sand under my feet was cool, not cold. Just the kind of cool that makes you remember you're alive. I'd started bringing a thermos of tea with me to the shore. Some people bring journals or chairs. I brought warmth. Because healing isn't about what you leave behind. It's what you carry forward. As I walked along the shoreline, I passed a little boy digging in the sand. His father knelt beside him, showing him how to shape walls with wet sand. The boy laughed big, open-mouth, belly-deep joy. And for a second, it pierced something in me. I didn't flinch. I didn't ache. I just watched. I thought of Josh as a boy. The way his hair used to stick up in the back after naps. The way he used to ask do seagulls get lonely on long drives. The way he clapped when I made grilled cheese just right golden with the crusts cut off. And I let that memory float away like a balloon no one chases. Back home, I found a card in my mailbox. No envelope. Inside it said, "Thank you for raising him. I'll do better with her." It was signed, Megan. I sat on the couch card in hand and watched the light shift across the floor. I didn't cry. Instead, I whispered to the room, "Then do better." That's all I ever wanted. I didn't call her. I didn't write back. But I did something I hadn't done since the day they told me there was no space for me. I turned my phone back on. No more unknown number blocks. No more running. I was still cautious, still selective, but not scared. Later that evening, I walked to the beach again, this time with a different thermos hot cocoa. My guilty pleasure. I found a spot by the dunes and settled in. The moon was beginning to rise, a soft silver disk, climbing into the velvet sky. Behind me, someone laughed. Ahead of me, waves folded over themselves. And inside me, everything was quiet, not hollow, full. I reached into my coat pocket and touched the blue seashell. It was smooth now, familiar. Just like the woman I'd become. Not bitter, not broken. Just done with begging for room in stories that never made space for me. "You want a closing line? Here it is." They said there was no space for me. So I built one. And I stayed. If you're still here, thank you. Truly. You've just spent time walking with me through a story that wasn't just about betrayal, or money, or even family. It was about finding a place to stand after everything around you gives way. It's a quiet truth, really. Peace doesn't come wrapped in apologies or confessions. It comes in moments. A full night's sleep. An unopened message you don't feel the need to reply to. A seashell you didn't expect to find meaning in. Some people spend their whole lives asking for space for validation, for someone to say, "Yes, you matter." But sometimes the most powerful answer is the one you give yourself. I didn't win. This wasn't a victory lap. But I'm not defeated either. I'm just here, softer, still, a little stronger in the places that used to break. And if you're listening to this, and you've been there, used, erased, misunderstood, I hope you know this. You don't need permission to move on. You don't need closure to begin again. And you absolutely don't need to shrink just because someone else forgot how to love you. Now, wherever you are curled up in bed, driving alone, or maybe just trying to fall asleep, breathe a little easier tonight. Because you're not alone. Not anymore. Now turn the lights off. Let the quiet hold you for a while. You made it. Good night.